What inspired you into the field of Indigenous health?
Being, Métis woman, it's really important to me to pursue an area in Indigenous issues. I very early on in my career, I participated in what was called the Federal Student Work Experience Program. So that was sort of the turning point for me in my career. It basically allowed Indigenous students to work either in the federal government or within an Indigenous organization in the area of policy, with the idea that they wanted more Indigenous people in public policy. After I finished at the AFN, I went over to the First Nations Inuit Health Branch, which was a branch at Health Canada. I was the only Indigenous person, and I was a student still, working in that department. And that was really kind of horrifying because a lot of the people working on like big policy for Indigenous peoples were non-Indigenous, and many of them had stated that they had never even been into an Indigenous community before. And so I decided to pursue my PhD after that and look more closely at that, specifically at the ways that federal, provincial, territorial policies are impacting First Nations and Métis people specifically on the ground. That was really, I think, that a really big turning point for me. Just the lack of Indigenous people in these kinds of positions.
Can you tell us more about the potential you see in technology in Indigenous communities?
So I use a lot of arts-based methods. I would say I have kind of like a more eclectic program of research, but the one common denominator with all of my projects is that they are community-led and community-based and participatory. So what that means is that, I work with communities. It's not me as the researcher saying, I want to do this, and then I want you to be like my research subjects. I'm going to study you because obviously there's a long history of poor research in Indigenous communities. And it's really my role as a researcher to support communities and to do research that is strength-based and that research that is going to benefit communities. The article I wrote, the one that Stacey Margerison and I wrote in the Canadian Medical Association Journal, it really validated to the medical community that Indigenous knowledge and arts-based research, qualitative research, community-engaged research is valid research, right? Indigenous knowledge is scientific knowledge. It's, and so I think that to me was like to profile our research for the Canadian Medical Association Journal, to do that was a signal in many ways about the importance of Indigenous research.
For those who don't identify as Indigenous, what would you recommend in understanding and being able to involve Indigenous communities in research in a meaningful way?
I have students who want to work with me who are non-Indigenous, who want to do a thesis or a major research project on Indigenous issues. But for me, it would be like, well, have you taken an Indigenous Studies course? Like we have so many and so many wonderful faculty members, and we teach some great courses on Indigenous research methods. And, I teach the Indigenous methods course and Indigenous theory. Courses around, just even first year Indigenous Studies courses. So for me on like history and the impacts of the residential school system and the Indian Act and how that's, contributed to the poor sort of health inequalities within our communities. So I would absolutely say to students, like, really make sure that you either take a course or really get that background information before you even like approach a community or an organization.
What was the most important lesson you've learned over the course of your career?
So when I was about to defend my PhD in political science, and it has to always go out to an external examiner. So my external examiner was like a white man political scientist. So he got my dissertation and then the reviews came back and he was like, she can't defend this. This is like not political science. This is like not everybody supports community engagement. This isn't part of the discipline. She needs to basically rework her whole dissertation so that it fits into like the political science boxes. For me, that was also a really big turning point, because I was just like, you know what? I am going to continue to do this work. I'm going to get tenure. I'm going to get a job, an academic job, and I'm going to, as the first Indigenous scholar in that department to get a PhD. And then I went on to become a Canada Research Chair. So, which is one of the highest honors in the country to get. So I'm currently a Canada Research Chair. And then I was like, and I'm going to keep doing my work and I'm going to get tenure and promotion. And I did. So for me, I think it's just, having the confidence to stay true to yourself and, your values. And I was so proud of this work and it was so meaningful to me. So I think, yes, like confidence, patience and passion, I guess, are, my takeaways.